start off with Tales of the Underworld, shall we? Bunch of Star Wars content came out this weekend for Star Wars Day on May the 4th, including this, which was the Tales of the Underworld. And it's just an animated short, typically 3 episode arc, which it is just a 3 episode arc for each of two characters that they choose to focus on. This one was obviously based on the picture you can see on the right. It was Cad Bane and Asajj Ventress, which are two of the more popular people from the Clone Wars that got focused on. And then it's basically 3 10-minute episodes. Um, and they previously had the interruptions by technical difficulties. Um, they previously had these previous ones were Tales of the Empire and Tales of the Jedi, which were 10-minute episodes focusing on different either Jedi or Imperial characters, etc. So this is just the extension of those. So they're like little, you can't really expect a whole lot. They're just a little flavor. Overall, I'll just start with the bang grade for this whole thing is still a C to me. Although I enjoyed the Cad Bane arc and flavor that it added, it just doesn't have enough time to really cook. And Ventress overall could have been a little bit better. Well, let's jump into Ventress's episode. She had 3 episodes, and they were entitled right down here. A Way Forward, Friends, and One Warrior to Another. And I'm pretty sure they started off cooking. They started off completely on fire. Um, they had Ventress come back to life right off the rip, and they had it in canon, although they changed a little something of it. Instead of it being Dooku bringing her back to life, it was her lover Quinlan Voss, who's also very popular, and I was stoked to see Night Sister stuff, diving more into that kind of canon and stuff. But I was digging the first episode, and again, it's very short, so her coming back to life, Quinlan Voss being involved, I was like, oh my God, this 3 episode arc is gonna be fire. And then she got into a nice lightsaber fight right off the rip. I didn't really like how she had to be saved because it's freaking Ventress, but she's been out of the game for a little bit, so I was okay with it. And Ventress was being Ventress, so it was cool. It started off really, really good, and then the next episode, Friends, and the one after that, the One Warrior to Another, just completely bombed. They were so boring, and I thought I had maybe missed some lore because I like Star Wars, a lot. I watch Clone Wars. I just watched Clone Wars maybe once or twice in some of my favorite episodes, more than once or twice, but I thought for sure I was missing some critical information about the One Warrior to Another episode, um, about him, the grandfather character, being someone from the show or from Bad Batch, and it was going to connect back to something big from there. And then I found out that they literally just named the character grandfather and granddaughter in the credits, and I missed nothing. And that story was just a PTSD dude that somehow knew Ventress, and it had no connections to anything. I was like, did you guys even try? Like, there's plenty, there's plenty of people you could have picked. So they ended up, you know, uh, they ended up kind of dudding on the last 2 episodes. And just real quick on my notes, like I said, she started off on fire when she was being rebirthed, but when she met Lyco, who's the Jedi survivor kid from Order 66, which has been beaten to death at this point. They need to stop coming up with random ass survivors from Order 66. Um, after she meets him, the only interesting part about the whole thing was that there was a possibility she might run into Quinlan, and it never happened. And then the identity of that possible grandfather who had no identity. So when I got done watching the episodes, I was like, this is like a D. Like the Ventures portion was like a D to D plus, like just for the rebirth alone. Um, it was kind of cool. I would not watch it again. Maybe just the rebirth scene, but I wouldn't put it back on just to be like, oh yeah, remember how cool that was. So I wasn't riding very high when they just whiffed with Ventress like right out the gate. But then they went to Bane, um, who was tragic and sad from start to finish. So it was an origin story for Cad Bane, the bounty hunter, and I always thought Cad was a little overpowered, and I preferred Boba Fett, but Cad grew on me over the years, and he's still pretty badass. And I was hoping, I was like getting more with Cad Bane. He's a cool character, and I found it kind of annoying to see him as a little kid, little punk on the street, but it was cool to see him getting recruited by his eventual mentor, which I wrote down his name. I think it was Laszlo or something. No, Laszlo's the vampire from. I can't remember his name. Apparently, I didn't write it down. He gets recruited by a guy who basically looks like Cad Bane, and he gets all of his style and everything from Cad. Um, or Cad gets it from him. And then the second episode, he comes back, and a marshal has killed his mentor, and he's coming back for revenge. And he finds out his best friend that grew up with him on the streets is now a deputy. And Cad meets a girl, falls in love, and he's eventually arrested. And due to the fact that his friend knows he's going to be violent, when he's arrested, they basically get his, gun disarmed from him and everything. Oh, and the episode titles are for that one, "The Good Life, A Good Turn, and One Good Deed." And he's arrested and goes to jail. And then in the third episode, based on a technicality, which I would love to know what technicality that is when you killed a law enforcement officer. He gets released from his jail, and everyone's telling the deputy, "Man, you got to skip town. Cad's coming." And they end up in a nice little western duel in the middle of the street, and the guy doesn't really want to fight his friend. And they end up a little standoff, and Cad kills him. And he's trying to tell Cad he knows something he needs to tell him, and the whole fight. And Cad doesn't care. Cad wants his revenge. And then it turns out that Cad's girl was pregnant when he went to prison. She married the deputy so that her kid could be protected and grow up. But in Cad's eyes, he had just stolen his girl and like had a kid and a family with him. And this all happens, including Cad killing his best friend in front of his child. And then Cad just immediately recognizing that he killed him in front of his child, and instead of doing anything about it, Cad just turns around, walks away. And his kid's name is Isaac, I think. And Cad just abandons him, knowing that he just set off another circle of revenge, basically. Um, and I was just like, wow, that was dark, and that did nothing but add flavor to Cad's already dark character. So overall, I initially had that one. I'd say it like a B minus. I was still pretty bored with it, but it was dark, good storytelling. It's hard to tell where this stuff fits. Overall, I'd say again, this is like a C. I don't really plan on rewatching any of this stuff. It's probably the worst of the three that they've released so far: the Tales of the Jedi, the Empire, and um, now the Underworld. It's probably the worst of the three. So if you're gonna watch them, I'd watch them in order. Not that it has any continuity, just in ranking terms, I think the Jedi was the best one that was first. And this one was, Tales of the Jedi was best. Empire was meh. This one was meh. They're short. They don't harm anything. They add depth to the characters. I have no problem with the show, but they don't really stand out. There's nothing really crazy about them that would make me recommend them to friends or anything. But that's our Tales of the Underworld review.